Ryan Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630. WMAL.
You know, after that last segment, I want some cornflakes. I'm just sort of hungry for some cereal.
You're flaky.
Yeah, well, I am, and anybody who says so knows me well. Hey, listen, we have Grover Norquist on the line. Grover, of course, is with the Americans for what is it? The term?
Tax reform.
Tax reform. I'm sorry. Thank you.
How could you forget that?
I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Because we call it ATR.
That's right. Grover, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you.
It's good to be with you, and thanks for joining us here on the Morning Majority. I want to start by talking about this debate that's going on up on Capitol Hill. It looks like we've sort of hit an impasse where Democrats are saying, look, we're going to go along with some cuts, but there can't be any increase in taxes. The two Republicans that were in these deficit reduction talks walked away. John Kyle and Eric Cantor walked away out of those meetings and now say it's up to the Speaker and the President to sort of hammer this out. Do you think that Speaker Boehner is going to be someone who might consider an increase in taxes in this country?
Why does somebody keep asking that after the 57th time he said, President Obama, listen carefully. You have spent the country into bankruptcy. We're spending $1 trillion more this year than when you became president. The problem is your spending. We're going to reduce your spending.
So you have no doubt then.
Obama's response is, can I take more money from the American people to pay for my spending?
so you have no doubt that John Boehner will hold the line here.
Well, yes, not only Boehner, but Speaker Boehner has said this, as has Mr. Cantor of Virginia, and the entire Republican caucus, save 6 people, are on record as having taken a pledge to their constituents that they're not raising taxes. John Kyle,
I saw him on the weekend shows. He left a little wiggle room for something called fee increases. What do you think about that?
Well, it'd be interesting to see, because I've talked every once in a while. Kyle says something that the press says, "Oh, now he's open to tax increases," and I call him on the phone and say, "What in the world is the press saying?" He said, "Grover, we're not raising taxes. That isn't happening," and this is not something that Obama wants to give on. He thinks the problem is the peasants aren't sending enough money into the king to spend on his cool stuff. He wants to buy more castles, and the rest of us think the problem is that the nobility over here is spending too much of other people's money, and that's the argument. The Republicans want to cut spending, the Democrats want to raise taxes, and that's why whatever happens will not be a compromise. Someone will win and someone will lose. I'm betting on the American people and the Republican caucus in the House and Senate.
Well, doesn't it depend on what you define as an increase in taxes? I say that because there's been speculation that, hey, they may cut the tax rate itself, maybe even the corporate tax rate, but get rid of certain write-offs or loopholes in the tax code. So, for instance, let's just say, I'm just making this up, if you got rid of the mortgage deduction for a guy like me, if my tax rate went down, but they got rid of the mortgage deduction, I may be actually paying more in taxes, but someone who's renting would be paying a lot less in taxes. Is that something that you could live with, or is that completely off the table as well?
Well, there are two questions. One is tax reform, as President Reagan did, cutting tax rates and broadening the base so that it's revenue neutral. It's not a hidden tax increase. It's not a Trojan horse for higher taxes. Is that acceptable? It's not only acceptable, it's desirable. It's where we ought to go. However, the Republicans in the House and Senate have told the administration repeatedly, tax reform is a different project. Since the Democrats want to use tax reform to raise taxes, it is not safe to have it discussed in the same room as how we cut spending, because the Democrats will say, oh, we have this tax reform idea. Yeah, and it raises $2 trillion. That's what the Obama Commission came up with, and the reason why conservatives are unhappy with Senator Coburn is he voted for $2 trillion tax increase. Just a commission, by the way, but he's for actually doing that.
Right.
You can have tax reform that raises trillions, with a T, trillions of dollars. The answer to that is heck no.
All right, you said Senator Coburn. Here's what he said about you the other day.
Do you think we can actually solve this problem without compromising on some of the things that are important? And that doesn't mean you compromise your principle. It means, how do we fix a very real problem that's imminently going to change everybody's outcome for the future in this country if we fail to do it? It's a big challenge, and it's much bigger than most people know. and it's much more dangerous than most people know.
All right. Before you respond to that, this is the second cut is what I want you to respond to, which is when he's specifically talking about you and your fears.
His fear is to get that compromise, we might abandon what he sees as an ultimate principle of the Republican Party. The ultimate principle of the Republican Party should be do what is best interest of the country and the future of the free enterprise system in this country. That ought to be the number one principle. And will there at some time be that we might have to raise rates if we can't get out of it? If we don't, guess what's going to happen? We're going to be treated just like Greece. Greece is going to be our model if we don't control our own destiny.
All right, you want to respond to that, Grover?
Yeah, Greece has high tax rates. Greece has been following the Coburn model of when the left raises spending, the opposition party should run out and raise taxes to pay for that spending. That's what Jack Kemp used to refer to as becoming the tax increaser for the welfare state. It is exactly what Greece has done. And Coburn's suggestion, here's the good news. Coburn is by his lonesome on this. The rest of the Republican Party is committed to not raising taxes but reining in spending. When the Ryan plan was passed in the House, Senator Coburn denounced it because it didn't raise taxes. He's so wedded to tax increases that there was a $6 trillion spending restraint measure on the table, and instead of saying, boy, that's a heck of a lot better than the Obama plan that Coburn voted for, he attacked it because it didn't raise taxes.
Well,
this is silly. There are two kinds of people who want to raise taxes to pay for Obama's government, and people who want to reduce the spending of Obama's government.
Well, Grover, on ethanol, I don't feel like I'm somebody who wants to raise taxes, but on the ethanol subsidy vote, and myself and many conservatives were like, well, isn't that something we do want to get rid of? And then, I was a little bit confused at first by ATR's position on this, because it feels to me like, as fiscal conservatives, we want to get rid of all that string pulling and all the government weighing in on the market. So explain to me a little deeper what the ATR position was on the ethanol subsidy vote.
Sure, and I understand you may be confused because Coburn lied about it in public repeatedly, but here's the good news. We sent a letter that's a matter of record to the Hill. It said, 1, let us get rid of the tax credit for ethanol. It dies in December anyway. It's only here for another 6 months. And it would raise taxes by $3 billion to do that. Let us at the same time have a tax cut of $3 billion or more so that it's revenue neutral. Let's take rates down just a teeny bit so that we could both get rid of the tax credit for ethanol and reduce rates. But we went further. We said 98% of the distortion caused by the ethanol regime, because it's not just the tax credit. That's 1 or 2% of the problem. There is a government mandate that puts a gun at the head of refiners and says you have to make this stuff, you have to sell this stuff, even though consumers don't want it. That mandate, Senator DeMint, had a bill which said we'll get rid of the death tax and we'll get rid of the mandate. And then we wrap that around Coburn's teeny little tax increase of getting rid of the tax credit, which does nothing to solve the ethanol problem. And when we were doing that, we got the Republican leadership to agree if there would only be a vote on the one and the other, so that no Republican would ever be tricked into voting for the teeny, stupid little tax increase that Coburn had, without the ability to also oppose the tax increase by having a larger tax hike, and by actually getting rid of the ethanol mandate, the law that says you have to use it. Mm-hmm. You can go and watch on C-SPAN Coburn giving speeches about how he's wedded to the mandate, how he likes the fact that the American people are made to use this stuff. He is not an opponent of the ethanol regime. He just wanted to raise taxes a teeny bit and then turn to the Republicans and say, well, now we know that you're willing to raise taxes. Let's go to my $2 trillion project.
All right, we'll leave it there, Grover. Thanks for your time. As always, appreciate it.